I seriously didn't even know this thing existed. I need to teach the world. This thing popped up on Reverb one night and I was like, oh my goodness, another member of the Widow family? You know, we're talking about those cool Les Paul Customs that have the colored binding that's matching on the headstock and the body. And if you're not familiar with the Widow series, don't worry, I'll catch you up here in a second. But let's go ahead and get this one open and learn about what makes this particular one special and how it relates to the family. Inside here is what is known as the Gibson Les Paul Stealth. That's right. It's a part of the Widow series. It's like a purple Widow, except for it's a very dark finish in the center. You have factory stock EMG active pickups, but you're also going to see things like no fret inlays, purpled headstock. What exactly is going on here? Let's do a little bit of history.
The Widow series was actually born as a Sam Ash exclusive called the Black Widow. Now, despite being called the Black Widow, it wasn't actually black. It was like the Black Widow spider. It actually had a spider decal on the back of the headstock with a red stinger. And that birthed not only the Widow series, but also animal-influenced Les Pauls, which are some of my favorite ones. And the original Black Widows actually had R7 historic gold top specs. That's what it was billed as on the COA, an R7. So that means you had things like the ABR1 bridge, the long neck tenon, single ply binding on the front, no binding on the back, but yet it still had a Les Paul custom neck on it, so you had the ebony fretboard with mother of pearl block inlays with the custom emblem on the headstock. But kind of a curious spec about those is they were also chambered.
The Cobra Burst was another guitar very similarly spec'd, however it's not necessarily a Widow.
But then flash forward 2.5 to 3 years later, in 2012, Gibson finally released their own lineup of Widow guitars. This is the first time that you see multiple colors introduced. It's no longer just the red Widow with the red colored binding. They introduced orange, green, red, purple, and blue. Now, in my opinion, orange and green are the coolest ones because what is most unique about this lineup is they have the rosewood fretboard, because 2012 is that first year where ebony was kind of a hard thing for Gibson to come by due to government raids. So if you ever see one of these with a rosewood board, you know it's from the original first series, and they made anywhere between 15 to 35 of each color. But something to know about these is these are officially custom shop Les Paul Customs. These are no longer R7s, so that means you have multi-ply binding on the front and the back, which gives it a very striking look on the edges. But at the same time, you lost the historic features, so you no longer have the long neck tenon, you no longer have the ABR1 bridge. It is now down to the Nashville style and short neck tenons. And most of these were flame tops. I believe you can find some quilty ones, but most of them are billed as Les Paul Custom Fs. These runs eventually sold out, and it was a proof of concept that there are people willing to buy a single color guitar like this from the custom shop. So anything made from 2013 till early 2019 is what I consider a third generation Widow. It's the exact same thing as generation 2, except for they use Richlight fretboards. Now, Richlight is not inherently bad, but a lot of traditionalists hate it, but that's the only spec that's changed between these, except for they now have added more colors. You can custom order any color you want. They also introduced satin finishes on these guys, and you were able to order these in new body styles like the Flying V and a few other ones. And a fourth generation Widow is anything made 2020 and beyond. The difference for those is you'll actually have a real ebony fretboard, just like the original Black Widow. But what if I told you there was actually a prototype stage in 2010? That's what this guy is right here.
Yeah, I still don't have too much of an explanation for that one, besides it was probably some sort of an early prototype, because it shared similar specs to the Black Widow series. So it was kind of a stepping stone into Gen 2 Widows. So imagine my surprise when I see this thing on Reverb. It's like, what is it? So first off, we need to figure out what year was this created to see what generation does it technically fall in. The serial number dates it to 2010. Now, this is technically after the Purple Widow prototype, so maybe that influenced this and going into the full production run of what Gen 2 eventually became. So this is kind of a transitional model in that particular aspect, but look what's on the back of the headstock on top of this. They call this thing Stealth, and it has a unique little decal back here. Kind of looks like a stealth plane or something. So I really like this model now because it's kind of like a brother model to the Black Widow or the Cobra Burst. It's not necessarily animal influenced, but any guitar that has a cool little decal on the back that's different from your regular Gibson custom shop logo is cool in my book. Now, how many of these things did they make? There's not really good information online about this, because I thought maybe it was another Sam Ash exclusive or maybe a different dealer. Most of these things ended up overseas. Sometimes that's how Henry J just swept things under the rug. If they don't sell well in the US, he ships them overseas and then they sell. But it seems most people say there's around 25 of these things out there, so very similar to the other Widows in their colors. But this one is just a little bit more different and extreme. But the stealth title is official. It's on the COA booklet. And as a final little bit of trivia, there's actually kind of a sister model to the one I just discovered. It's called the Les Paul Custom Phantom. It also had 25 made, but this time it was all blacked out. So we're talking the black binding on the neck and the body, and of course also on the headstock. No, actually they left the headstock alone on those. While that might look strange at first, I mean, look at Phantom of the Megaplex over here. White mask, everything else is blacked out. It makes total sense when you know what this thing's called. Kind of a strange one. I almost bought one out of Japan about 4 years ago because I thought it was like the closest thing that we'll ever get to an inverse bucket head. So be sure to let me know if you know of any other similar guitars to these that may exist. So to learn more about this unique model, let's go ahead and throw it on the workbench to take a look at its parts and specs. Boy, that was a filthy guitar, but now it's nice and shiny. So, unfortunately, I've got some bad news. These are not the original pickups in this guitar. I know what you're thinking. Ha! I knew there couldn't have been a stock EMG Gibson guitar. No, those really do exist, and this is one of them. It's just somebody swapped this out for the X series. So it's still the EMG 81 and 85 set. It's just the X series of each of them. Now, what does that mean? According to EMG's website, they added dynamic control over these with a new preamp. So is it a big deal? Not really. Find some EMGs that are dated to 2010 and nobody'd ever be able to know, because it's not like they messed with the electronics down here. I don't think. Maybe they did. I don't know. But this one dates to mid-2011, and this one's late 2014. I flipped the pickups because it was 81-85, but traditionally it's 81-85. And there's nothing against swapping them, but I'm just gonna demo it traditionally. Knowing that this is a mixed set and that this is typically the bridge one, that also makes a lot more sense why it's a little bit discolored there. It's probably somebody's picking wear, because that did not clean off. But so far the specs seem to follow the early Widows. You have a short neck tenon in here. Here's what our bridge pickup cavity looks like. Everything's done up on this quick connect system. We still have a maple top with a mahogany body. It's a regular Nashville style bridge with a full weight tailpiece. We've got black speed knobs as 2 volumes and 2 tone controls. And these guys are stock without any pick guards on them, so you don't have to worry about any holes or anything like that. But this finish is kind of interesting. It's definitely a very, very deep dark purple. I saw some forum posts thinking that this was actually like an oxblood finish and then there's just the purple binding. Nah, it's just all a very deep dark purple. Maybe the outside B-roll shots will show it off a little bit better. That's the one downside to polishing these guitars. They just get way too reflective. And I've got polarizers, it just doesn't really seem to help that much. But this one was definitely played. It's got some pretty heavy scratches in some areas. But what's really cool is you see these lines right here? At first I thought it was like finish checking or something. No, that's the maple wood grain underneath this finish. I especially like seeing it in this area because it's the ringed wood grain style. So imagine if this would have been a flame maple top. You actually would have started to see some of the flame. But what's happening is this finish has really sunk into the pores of the wood. So you can see the 2-piece center seam line very clearly and all the rest of the wood grain as well as the scratches. I mean, this thing was definitely played. Just because I polished it up doesn't mean it's mint condition collectible anymore. So I definitely want one of these in my collection. I'm just not sure if this is the right one. So if anybody has a cleaner one that they want to sell, let me know. But if there's only 25 of these, maybe I should hold on to it till I have something good to replace it with. So it's supposed to be an ebony fretboard. It is very wood grainy. I really thought this was just a dark piece of rosewood, but now that it's been conditioned, it definitely plays the part of ebony. This is really rather unfortunate for this guitar because there's no fret markers, so you're like, okay, where am I supposed to go? All right, I'll use the side dots. Side dots are covered over in a dark purple. It's kind of hard to see. Like right now my camera is overcompensating the exposure, but on a dark stage, yeah, probably not stealthy in a good way. That's the other thing people like to comment about on these things is Les Paul stealth. You chose purple? Well, it's a dark purple, and yeah, they could have blacked out the hardware to complete the look even more, but this kind of matches the frets or something like that. This might not have been the most well thought out limited edition, but it's pretty cool. It's got 22 medium jumbo style frets. But I really like the fact that they chose cream binding on this, because then when they spray it over in purple, you kind of get almost a double bound effect going on. The nut measure is 1.7 inches. The 12th fret is 2.08. We got a first fret neck depth of 0.85 and 0.94 by the 12. Here's that neck profile at the 1st and 12th fret. It's just your standard medium C-shaped neck profile that most customs have. Moving on to our headstock. You just got your beautiful purple Gibson logo here, and our truss rod's looking okay on this example. I'm kind of surprised it has a Les Paul custom truss rod cover. I just would have put a blank one on here. The chrome look looks pretty nice with the dark purple finish in my opinion. But again, to clarify, this is not purple mother of pearl, it's just a purple finish put over top of the regular stuff. The same thing is true for the binding. In fact, there's an area over here by the cutaway where the binding has kind of been rubbed through so you can actually still see the white. Now somebody tried to touch that up with a blue marker, so I just wiped that off. Thankfully, when you're playing it, it's not very noticeable. All strung back up now. That's such a sleek look on this fretboard now that it's all cleaned and conditioned and you got fresh strings on it. Now that the sun is shining in on here, you can kind of see it's just like a dark eggplant color if you get it in the light. But now we move on to the back. I'm gonna be real honest with you guys here. I don't know if the X series requires different pots. I know they talked about preamps. Maybe that's what this thing is right here. But if anybody has a EMG 8185 set from like late 2009, 2010, let me know, because it would be nice to restore this guitar. But it is indeed active, and you just have a battery back here. You just need like green back plates on here, and then you get like Joker vibes. The fact that this actually has back body binding is really special at the time that this was introduced, because even that prototype that slightly predates this one didn't quite have full-on Les Paul custom specs yet. So maybe that's where the stealth fits in here. So there's Gen 1, Gen 2, and then like two in-betweens here. Probably the worst thing condition-wise on this is there's a pretty nasty gouge in the finish right here. Now what caused that? A stand. One of those crappy A-frame stands definitely burnt the finish here. It's a little bit less noticeable now that the guitar's polished up though. And this is always pretty common on the Widows. As they age, sometimes you'll see like the lacquer shrinking lines around there and it just kind of looks ugly, but you have to live with it. Currently, we have black Schallers. I'm guessing these strap locks are aftermarket, because all the other hardware on this thing is chrome. The back of the neck is also a very dark purple, but I mean, it's even darker. I've come to really appreciate this. It's called Stealth, but it's also slightly fuzzy. Fuzzy as in out of focus. So it kind of matches the whole theme that they were going for here. And even the finish on the neck has really sank into the wood grain. You can definitely see a whole lot of that. But we've got just regular Grover tuners here, and our serial number dating it to 2010. The 1153rd guitar produced that particular year. Do a quick blacklight test here, just to see if there's any touch-ups or anything. Everything is looking okay here on the front. I'm kind of surprised this area doesn't glow significantly different, so that tells me it's just natural rubbing against something that kind of ate away the finish there. The headstock's also looking good. This right here definitely proves that was a stand that discolored and indented that area, but the rest of everything else is looking good on this one. All said and done, it's just a little over 9.5 pounds. 9 pounds, 9.1 ounces. Let's go ahead, plug it in, and get some tones. if you want to do some Metallica or really chuggy stuff, as always, EMG pickups will do that. However, these really do get a bad reputation. I mean, anytime you put EMGs in a Gibson, generally it's not all that desirable. I mean, this one's got the cool other specs to kind of save it as far as traditionalists go. But you can do some interesting stuff with EMG pickups. Like, they can be really aggressive, like I have it set right now. Or you can roll them back just a little bit. I mean, you can do that with normal pickups too. It's just, they don't have to be aggressive, crazy guy stuff. But EMGs have a really nice bell-like clean tone too, so let me show you. Alright, now in my opinion, the bridge is a little bit too ice picky, but kind of spanky at the same time. I've always thought it kind of sounded like a piezo pickup. I mean, they all have some active elements to them, so I guess it makes sense. You can also mess with your tone controls. We'll see if that helps the bridge. Yeah, that helped. Just roll it down to a 7 and then it's not quite as extreme. Now that we know all about the Les Paul Custom Stealth, what are my final thoughts on this thing? Is it my favorite Les Paul Custom I've ever had? No, but I had a great time playing this because I haven't had EMG pickups in probably about a good 2 years. So it's just kind of a blending of the Widow series mixed with the Animal series in a unique way. Now, would I suggest this to a gigging musician? Honestly, probably not. These dot inlays on the side of the neck are very hard to see. You'd probably have to get some glow-in-the-dark paint or maybe even some white nail polish to mark them a little bit better if you're going to be playing on a dark stage. However, it's got a pretty cool menacing effect to it. So I think now I really want to find one of those Les Paul Custom Phantoms. I bought one about 4 years ago, however it got canceled because it was over in Japan. It was kind of a weird situation. But I hope you enjoyed learning about this rare, obscure model today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care. If you enjoyed tonight's episode with active pickups, how about you check out the Rammstein Les Paul? That's another heavy-hitting beast.